everybody, and welcome to Or Something. This is the podcast where every week we cover origin stories of various topics. Oh, that sounded boring. I need to come up with a better intro. Just immediate criticism. I'm Kristen, and this is Karla.
Welcome to the most boring podcast in the world. It's that IT crowd. Game bored.
Hey, I got an email from our podcast hosting place or whatever that tracks like all our stats. I don't know why I have these conversations on the episode.
I love it.
It's really like
it gives
taking down
an
that fourth wall.
thing.
Yeah, true, exactly. And it said that we are ranking on Apple Podcasts. We in Canada. We're at number 261 in the history category in Canada. Like, how many podcasts are there?
Oh, but that's exciting.
Come on, guys. We're moving on up.
And now we're quickly going down. Yeah. It's like the Simpsons thing where like the guy's counting out the money for Bart, and then Milhouse, like, he breaks a bunch of glasses, and then he counts backwards.
Counts it backwards immediately.
Yeah.
That's basically it, exactly.
So we're now at
every
spot 700 of the... And wouldn't it be funny if they had like specific history category yet? Classical history.
Yeah, like more specific, yeah. I have a big counter, like one of those big like number things here, and it's just the numbers going down. It's the opposite of the billion hamburgers.
I'll do one of the
McDonald's.
PBS kind of pledge drives or whatever.
Okay.
Come on, people. Get us up to 250.
It's just us playing Anne of Green Gables, like, but the audio version of it, and then getting sued.
And just and like having those long commercial breaks in between.
Oh my gosh.
That was the brutal part with the PBS pledge things, because they would show you content that you wanted to watch, right? Like Pride and Prejudice, the A&E one. A&E? Hole in the plot.
Whatever, it works in some way.
Oh, no, the comedy things. What was it? I don't know if Mr. Bean, they would show.
Oh, really? On PBS?
Keeping Up Appearances. Yeah, it was like the British comedy stuff that we couldn't normally see.
You know what show I miss so much that I've been thinking of lately, because it always makes me think of the Christmas lunch episode, is The Vicar of Dibley. Do you remember that show? With Dawn French was in it, I think?
Yeah, Dawn French. The scene where she jumps into a puddle and just completely disappears because she's hiding from this guy. I think about that to this day. Like, I go by a puddle and that's what I think of. I'm like, this is iconic.
That is such a good show. If you guys are fans of British humor, definitely go try to find it. They
have all kinds of, like, you know, those specialty channels you can get now. I think there's like Acorn TV and some kind of Brit box or something like that. So I haven't checked to see if Vicar of Dibley is there. I'm assuming it is.
I hope so.
It's good.
It's so classic. It's so funny.
I kind of miss randomly like turning to PBS and kind of whatever channels and seeing, or CBS.
That's the problem, I think, with
CBS.
CBS.
Most American channel.
I think that's like, it's kind of the downside of all the streaming platforms is like, I don't even have regular cable anymore, so I never flip around. I never see commercials anymore, except like what's on YouTube or whatever. Yeah. But it's kind of, it takes away, even though it's awesome to be able to watch whatever you want, whenever you want, and binge a whole season, and all those great things that we missed so much when we watched regular TV all the time. It's still like there's no stumbling across something you might not have seen before. Right. You know, like there's
or having to watch something and then it's like garbage still, but it ends up being like this iconic thing, like this great memory for like all the made for TV movies we ended up watching.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and we still talk about them to this day. Like the guy, the jewel thief guy where he falls in love and we're like, why are we sympathizing with this
bad movie?
And I would watch like all the old Godzilla movies 3 a.m. Like, and so now
remember how we used to watch infomercials all the time, because it would literally be the only thing on like super late at night on a weekend, and it's like you're like,
and I can memorize. I still have a lot of them, like you know, like the Time Life, the cassette tape thing.
The cassette tape.
I still sing
Queen, Slow Ride, do 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 do,
and then it always started with Ools Out for Summer, not Schools Out for Summer.
We knew the whole compilation for this one album because they had so many infomercials for it. and we just sat there watching TV, and we memorized some of those songs. I don't even know the full song. Like when I've heard it in real life, I'm like, oh, that's how it goes. Because I'll just start singing like the first like line of the next song, right?
My nephew, like, I just started singing it. He's like, what are you singing? I'm like, well, I couldn't tell you the rest of the song because it's just a compilation.
Sit down with me, child. Back in the day, in the olden times.
I actually did explain the whole thing, and he's like, I don't care. And I'm like, I'm going to show you.
And forget it. How can you not appreciate the infomercial? Yeah.
Or even just normal commercials. I was thinking about Clifford Camp.
Oh my gosh, remember
the lawyer,
this
the
name.
injury lawyer? Yeah,
Clifford Camp. It worked.
You know what that made me think of? Sorry, going on tangent, just really quick. Clifford Camp, I realized, I think that was an American injury lawyer.
It was an American injury lawyer.
We had Spokane TV. And do you remember when we made our own Ouija board?
Our own Ouija board, yes. And it was about Coeur d'Alene.
Message, yes.
Coeur d'Alene, the heart of Allen.
The heart of Allen. That's what the Ouija board was telling us. We turned on the TV and we saw it was on the Spokane channel, and we were losing our minds. We're the dumbest people in the history of the world. And yet,
I think we were awesome. Awesomely stupid.
True. Very true.
Oh my gosh. That Clifford Kemp commercial. I wonder what he's up to now.
Can I just say, my week, I'm going into it. You guys.
Do it.
This will go down in the record books. We're at 200 something now. We're going to be at 7,000 something because my horrible lack of preparation, not from lack of trying. Do I ask for more time? Do I ask us to postpone recording? Nah. I had everything planned out, but we had a big, huge rainstorm yesterday, and everything was just pure ice everywhere.
Oh, no.
And that was made things pretty miserable. Phoebe, like my dog, we had to postpone her vet appointment to get her. She has like a cyst. We have to remove it. We had to postpone that. It was this whole thing. And then my poor mother slipped on the ice. And she's horribly injured.
Oh, no. Her tailbone or?
No, shoulder, ribs.
Oh my
leg.
God.
Her head has like a massive bruise. It's horrible, yeah.
Oh, no.
So I accompanied her to the doctor today, and I was just like, I need to watch her step everywhere. And I was like helping with groceries and cooking. And so just like
brutal.
A few minutes before the podcast, I'm like, I can do this. I can still edit. I can still make a nice presentation. I can revise. I'm going to cook dinner. And I smell like beef and onions now running down frantically.
Also, it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon there. Why are you cooking dinner?
Because I wanted to, we have to let the beef stew. So it's nice and tender for...
Oh, you cook real food. I forgot.
Yeah. I know, people always laugh because I'm like, I have to cook dinner and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, because I got to let it stew, man.
You'll make a great old person someday.
What the hell's wrong with you?
Everything's just super mushy in your house. This is way overcooked.
Oh my gosh, but I'm just a mess this week. Like, I can't.
No.
Like, if anything else goes wrong this year, it's one of those dumb years where there's just a pile-long list of things where I'm like...
2021?
Pile long.
2021? 2021. Yeah, oh boy. 2021 has been so brutal and stupid.
Right? And I know it's been brutal for everybody. Oh,
but it's like it's worse than 2020. Right? I would argue.
We actually had like a little kind of sayonara to 2020 where we were like, let's just, goodbye to that terrible year.
Yeah.
Here's hoping. And 2021 was way worse. And I'm just like, why do I hope?
I know. Just give up now. That's a lesson we're learning.
Yes. Super quick. I want people to know because I didn't realize I was on Instagram and apparently... people are still posting about mental health, like stigma, that there's still stigma with like getting therapy or talking about medication. And I'm like, how come? And I've been in a bubble because I'm open about it. And I follow a lot of people who on Instagram who are open about it. And I didn't realize there is still so much stigma.
Yeah.
And I just want people, because I know Christmas is coming up and people have a hard time and stuff. But it's just, there's no shame in having anxiety, depression, problems, stress, all this stuff, and getting help and talking about it and like getting medication if you need it and not getting medication if it's not for you. I just wanted to put that out there so people don't feel like alone because I struggle with anxiety and depression and it's something.
Well, and I think at the holidays it's so much harder because it's like we have this pressure and this expectation we put on ourselves for it to be this magical time and we should really enjoy being around our families or enjoy being around all these, we have these expectations set out. And I think that it's okay to acknowledge that, yes, while it can still be magical and it can still be a great time and you can still spend time with family, it can also be a terrible time at the same. Like, it's okay for it to be more than one thing, right? Like, it's okay for it to be a struggle and to be hard. So don't beat yourself up. Just take the time that you need.
January might be scary. Like, January's scary for me because it's like all that magic just disappears and it's a new year and everyone kind of expects everything to just go back to, okay, new year, let's do this. And that's hard for me personally. So, you know, but then I talk to people and I try to like, you know, so, but I just want to encourage people. There are usually pretty good resources in like major cities, hopefully smaller cities now, towns. If not, there's a lot of like online help and stuff for people too. So like just get help, like reach out. There's people there for you. It might take a few tries. It took me like ages to find the right kind of help, right? But yeah, sorry, I just had to put that out there.
But I also think it's like if you're not quite ready to take, I mean, I definitely encourage people to like reach out to a therapist, and it's really good to have like, you know, the third party and professionals and whatever. But it's also, if you're not quite ready to take that step and you're just kind of like feeling down or whatever, it's like you can even find podcasts to listen to that will, you find the community of people, like Karla was saying, you know, she follows people on Instagram, and like we surround ourselves with people who are like-minded because they understand us and we understand them. So know that you're not alone, and there are all kinds of resources out there. If you're listening to our podcast, you can listen to all kinds of other amazing podcasts out there for mental health.
Way to divert people right away. If you're listening to our podcast, you can listen to other better podcasts.
First, there are 215 better ones in this category alone.
I have to go call my therapist, excuse me.
Whatever, I was totally going to try to promote my other podcast. Damn it. I guess not anymore. Oh, no, it's just...
No, do it.
Well, I do another podcast with my friend Maddie, and we are doing, each month we do self-care experiments, because I don't really know what self-care is, and I got really burnt out this year and had a really, really, really difficult year, as most of us did. So we go through and we do a new self-care experiment each month, and we talk about kind of how it's going and all kinds of different issues that we're dealing with and all kinds of stuff. And we actually this year are doing we're doing a New Year's episode for 2021, and then one looking forward to 2022. So looking back on the year. But and our holiday episode is basically like, so the holidays are going to be great, but they're also terrible. Here's how to go into it and try to figure out what your triggers are and make a plan for it.
Nice. Yeah, so go listen to that, if anything, right?
But listen to this one first. And then rate, review, subscribe.
How do they know to listen to this first?
Oh, yeah. Shit, they're listening.
The whole thing.
No, finish it. The whole thing.
Right. Side note, okay, as my little self-care thing, I just want to put it out there. I've been watching Mystery Science Theater 3000 again, or MST3K again.
So good.
I finally caught up on the ones on Netflix. And I am late to the party, but apparently you can buy like a pass to get access to the next season, which isn't going to be on Netflix. They're going to do it themselves.
Oh, really?
And I think I might splurge. It's expensive, but it would come out to like about $9 or $10 Canadian per episode, which I think would be worth it completely to support.
Hey, you would spend more going to the movie theater. At least now you know you're going to like what you're watching, right?
You can like own it forever, I think. And it's just
cool.
like, I'm so excited because the episode, for anybody who listens to MST3K, because we have so many listeners, Cry Wilderness is probably one of the all-time best episodes ever, and I watched it I think 3 times already, and that's my little happy place for. So what do you do for like little mini self-care, like fun self-care? Do you have anything right now?
Oh, like a fun thing right now? Oh my gosh, right now Greg and I, we've kind of been doing it together, which is like, it's hard for us to find stuff to watch together that we both like really are into at the same time, even if it's stuff we're into. Like, we like that stuff, but you're just not feeling it at the moment. Right, you know? We quite often are off in that way. But for the last few days, we moved our mattress out into the living room. So we're having like a little camp out in there.
Sleepover.
Yeah, sleepover camp out. And like, we've got all the Christmas lights on and stuff. And we've just every evening been watching Fail Army on YouTube. And it's just like...
Is it just like
video after video of people like falling down and animals doing funny stuff and like car crashes, but like funny ones, not ones where people are hurt. Like just the craziest stuff. They have like whole Christmas episodes. It's like America's Funniest Home Videos, but like just better, because a lot of it now, because so many people have the doorbell footage and like the security footage from their houses. So many of them are just like funny, crazy things. Like there's this one
I have to watch.
Where it's an Amazon delivery driver. He came, you can see from the doorbell that he's like walking up with the packages. And as he's walking up towards the house, his van with the door open is going backwards down the street behind him. No. He's oblivious. So he drops it. He rings the doorbell. He takes a picture because they always send you the message saying that's delivered. And you watch him walking back towards where he thinks the van is supposed to be, which is out of screen. Like you can't see him, and then all of a sudden you see him just running so fast down the street past the house to go get the van. It's so funny. You feel so bad for the poor guy, but like it's pretty so funny to watch. Yeah. So that's kind of I think what we've been doing in the last week, just to like to totally let loose and not think about it or anything. Also,
that's why MSD3K, it's just constant giggle fest. So it's like I can't even think about anything because I'm just giggling and it gets worse and worse, and then I'm just dying.
And then when you get to that uncontrollable laughter stage, it's the best. You're like, I just can't stop laughing. It's so awesome. It's so important, I think, laughter.
Yeah.
I think we forget that. We take everything so seriously.
Yeah. Side note, people, I encourage you to look at your doorbell like footage or like your security footage, because some of the priceless videos we've like, there's this classic one we still make fun of. It was like minus 30 in the winter, and at my sister's house. So my mom was taking care of my nephew. She picked him up, and this is the footage. Like they go outside, it's minus 30. She just marches to her car, which is off camera, right? I think a good 5 minutes pass, and my nephew is just standing out in the snow, like putzing around, kicking at the snow. Like it looks like his grandma just left,
abandoned him.
And then I don't remember if he completely loses his boot, but he gets snow in his boot for sure. I think he took off his boot at some point. So it just looks like this neglected child in this, like, and it's just so comical because it's so painfully long. We're like, where's grandma? She just like up and left.
What is happening? And you're trying to think of all the different scenarios that might be going on, but you're like, no, it just looks like he's been left by himself.
And they've caught like, I don't have a doorbell cam, but like, my sister, they've caught like meteor things going by. Yeah, and like all kinds of animal antics, like coyotes and family of deer and all kinds of cool stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Like, and they're just right in the city. But
that's so cool.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I think that would be funny. Yeah. I should put a doorbell cam. I live in an apartment and just people walking down
but a lady just posted a video on the Nextdoor app where neighbors kind of share stuff. Of a blue jay like pecking at her doorbell, so it looked really funny. It looked like he was actually ringing her doorbell. He was just taking probably the weather stripping or whatever they steal from houses.
Clever little buggers.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, well, we've gone thoroughly off topic. As per usual.
It feels like I haven't seen you in forever, so I'm just
right?
Story after story. I'm like, what?
It's crazy. Okay, who's supposed to go first? You're going first this week.
I am.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
Just get it over with. Rip it off like a Band-Aid. It's going to be great.
Okay. Keyboard layout. QWERTY keys. QWERTY. Why is it in that? Like, what's the origin of that layout?
Why is it? Oh my gosh, that is so good.
Why did you ask the one thing? Okay, no. My quest this week, you guys. Do you remember the Muffin Tin Man fiasco? I still don't know who invented. Exactly. I still don't know who invented the muffin tin. I'm mad. So I'm like, I am going to find something that has a definite inventor.
Yep.
This one does, you guys.
Yes.
However, why he came up with the actual layout is a mystery. And I was swearing so hard. Damn. I almost threw my computer out the window. I'm like, no. So.
It's still a cool topic.
Most of this is going to be from Wiki. I'm really sorry, guys. It was really nicely laid out there. So join me as I read Wikipedia to you, apparently. There's some stuff later. I
Which
have
is
like
what
8
I do
pages.
every week.
This is painful. This is going to be horrible. I'm so sorry. No, it might be great. It might be the best thing you've ever heard.
It's going to be amazing.
Okay. I just have to dive right in.
Do it.
Christopher Latham Soles, 1819 to 1890. He was an American inventor, a newspaper publisher, and a Wisconsin politician, apparently.
Oh.
I have so much background on this guy, and I'm like, do we really care? Not really. So he's
But what were
contended.
his hopes and dreams?
I probably have more about that than I do of like why he did QWERTY. Anyway, so I say QWERTY, just easy for me. So in case anybody doesn't know, again,
Why
it's
is it called?
QWERTY.
Because those are the...
Those are the kind of like the top few letters.
I was like, why is it called QWERTY? And I looked down at my keyboard. And
Yeah.
I was like,
I should
it's
be a
right
little clear
there.
because if we have any like international listeners, they're not going to have the same keyboard necessarily, right? So English keyboards, we have a very specific. We have about like 3 rows mainly. So the top row, you have the letters starting Q, W, E, R, T. Oh, sorry, we have 4 rows. I'm a ding dong. Numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, blah blah blah. Then Q, W, E, R, T, Y, and so on. So the letters aren't alphabetical, and people. I'll get into why we use this, keep using this layout, and if it's an effective layout. But we actually don't know. We'll never know why exactly we did it this way. Have fun. I just leave. Just read Wikipedia yourselves, you bastards. Okay. We use this keyboard layout to this day. Okay. The guy, he was contended to have invented the typewriter, along with a guy named Samuel W. Soule, Carlos Glidden, and John Pratt. John Pratt was more of like a predecessor. Here's the thing. I'm just going to cut to the chase. Apparently, there were like 50,000 types of typewriters before this one became huge. So it's not like he actually super invented the typewriter. Like nobody had seen it before.
Okay. He just kind of refined it to be the version that we know now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think it was Soule, maybe Glidden. Oh, this is rough. He had other inventors basically helping him. They got all excited about it. It was kind of like this typewriter club. They're like, yeah, let's do this. I'm like, okay. So this is my favorite detail. It has nothing to do with the topic. But so Christopher Latham Sholes went by the name C. Latham Sholes or Latham Sholes. But never Christopher Sholes or Christopher L. Sholes. And I thought, daddy issues or something, maybe. I'm like, why does he want to go by Christopher?
And weird that they specifically mentioned that.
Right? They made
It
such
must
a
have
point
been an
of it.
issue.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, it would help historians if they're looking through documents, right? That they would
Right.
know Latham Sholes is...
But like that's a weird detail that he to
Right?
specifically say he never will have ever gone by that.
Right? I know.
What
And then I'm
happened
like,
there?
So the daddy issue thing kind of colors my research after this point, but whatever. So he was born in Mooresburg, Pennsylvania. One of his early jobs was working as an apprentice to a printer. And I don't really want to go into the history of printing because that's a whole other thing, right? So he eventually makes his way to Wisconsin. He marries a woman named Mary Jane McKinney.
But does she go by Mary J. McKinney?
Or just
Jane
Jane
McKinney? McKinney Latham Sholes.
We'll never know. McKinney Latham Sholes.
But she never goes by Betsy.
All I know is she's dead now. He became a newspaper publisher. But she isn't, though. Oh, crap.
Yeah.
Oldest woman alive, M.J. McKinney. He became a newspaper publisher. When he went to Wisconsin, he got into politics. He was in the Senate at some point. He was a Free Soiler, the Free Soil Party.
Free Soiler?
I looked it up, and it's basically just like anti-slavery kind of platform sort of thing. And
Okay, cool.
I mean, there's more to it than that, but I'm like, whatever. I have no patience for politics. And then, so he started as a Democrat. He became a Free Soiler. Then he ended up being a Republican. So it was a whole journey for him.
So he covered all the bases and basically just did whatever he could to
Unless
be in
his
politics.
dad was a Democrat, maybe he's like, I'm going to be a Republican. Dad. He was apparently instrumental in the successful movement to abolish capital punishment in Wisconsin. So it's kind of like person he was, I guess.
Okay. He's contributing left, right, and center.
He had a brother named Charles, who was also a newspaper publisher and politician. And that made me laugh because I thought,
oh my
this
God,
is
Charles
like
Latham
just
Scholes.
rich pickings for like family dynamic issues.
Oh my God,
and, like,
I love it.
did he resent Charles?
Let's write a movie about Charles and Christopher or C. Latham Scholes.
Yeah,
And
let's
like
just call
the
it
rivalry.
Scholes.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Typewriter.
You can see it now.
He has a type.
Yeah.
Okay, so typewriters apparently had been invented like as early as 1714, supposedly.
Whoa. That is early.
Yeah, but really it was like these guys in the 1860s. Okay, so they him and his buddies, they came across this article in Scientific American, I guess, journal, in 1867, which showed, no, it didn't show, it just described a typewriting machine. And this typewriting machine kind of described, like, I think the letters might have been in alphabetical order. I can't quite remember. But anyway, it was just this thing. And then the guys were like, you know what? Let's improve on this. Let's make our own version. And they made a more, like, simple, efficient model of the typewriter.
Okay.
And this is all important, like the typewriter business, because it could explain why we use the QWERTY layout for the keyboard.
Okay.
Okay, so the trio, they get all excited. They make their own machine. They probably ripped off John Pratt, who I think was the one who wrote that article. I don't know, whatever. And the trio were granted a patent June 23rd. Patents June 23rd and July 14th, 1868.
Okay.
And the first document to be produced on the typewriter was a contract that Scholes had written, actually. So, super quick inked ribbon had already been invented at this point. So it's not like, again, they didn't invent all the pieces.
So they're just playing around with the actual design of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So at this stage, like I said, the Scholes Glidden Soleil typewriter was only one among dozens of similar inventions. But here's the thing. These guys are savvy. So again, it goes down to that business savvy thing. They wrote a ton of letters with the machine, and they sent them all out, right?
Okay.
One letter reached a man named James Densmore, who basically saw dollar signs and was like, I'm in, without even seeing the machine. He's like, he offered to buy a share of the patent without even having seen the machine.
Oh my gosh. This
is funny. When he finally did see the machine, he apparently declared that it was good for nothing in its current form and urged them to start improving it. Can you imagine just walking in there? It's like, this is good for nothing.
So super confident. And then he's like, oh, wait, you guys are morons.
Well, Soleil and Glidden actually left the project after this. They were so discouraged.
No way.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So this is where things... Okay, this is kind of important. So they realized that stenographers would be one of the most important users of the typewriter. So they actually got a bunch of stenographers to test the machine. And there's one in particular who tested so many machines, like they had to just keep building them, and because he kept breaking them because he was so aggressively testing them. And he reviewed them so ruthlessly. So he was like, I forgot to write down his name, unfortunately, but he was like apparently this well-known court stenographer.
Oh my gosh.
And Scholes was pretty what's that called? Like, not disappointed. Like, demoralized it. What's that?
Like,
term?
discouraged?
Discouraged, thank you. After all this testing, and Densmore's like, no, come on, we can do this. After making about 50 different machines, by 1873, they approached the company E. Remington and Sons. They were manufacturers of firearms, sewing machines, and farm tools. And they were like, here's our typewriter. Take it. Remington's like, all right. Scholes sold his half for $12,000 at the time.
Okay.
But Densmore insisted on royalties, because he still thought the machine was going to be huge. He still really believed in it. And I think he made $15 million or something.
Holy
back then.
cow.
Yeah, so he was kind of smart.
Always
Scholes, however,
take
he kept
royalties.
tinkering. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
He kept tinkering with the model up until the end of his life, like with the keyboards and typewriter just generally. So he probably just liked being an inventor, right? Mm-hmm. So James Densmore had suggested splitting up commonly used letter combinations in order to solve a jamming problem caused by the slow method of recovering from a keystroke, right?
Yeah.
So this is what the big thing, one of the big arguments of like either pro or for this idea that QWERTY layout is there, because when people would type, if they typed the commonly used together letter combinations like TH or HE, that the keys would jam. But I think it makes a lot of sense that if the keys were jamming, if you pressed like common letters at the same time too quickly, like TH or HE, then they thought maybe space it out.
Yeah.
So,
that seems like a totally plausible and actually very realistic reason.
And the reason people shoot it down, and I think a little bit too quickly, is because the letters E and R are still together on the keyboard. And those are one of the most common.
And used together a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And so they think, well, why is that the case? But apparently, Scholes was going to patent QWE period TY originally. But at some point, it reverted back to QWERTY. So he's changed his mind at the last minute, it sounds like.
Weird. Can you imagine a period up there?
I know.
I mean, I guess you get used to whatever, right?
Yeah. People all over the internet, everywhere, they still regurgitate the same fact that, like, some people wound up typing so fast that the mechanical rods attached to the keys would stick to each other. And the other people said, like, it placed keys in such a manner that the most used letters were spaced out so that the rods were less likely to clash into each other when typing. So yeah. Some people thought, well, is this the most efficient maybe layout? Like, maybe that's why he designed it that way. And I think it was 1930s when a guy named Dvorak came up with a much more efficient layout for the keyboard. It's called Dvorak's keyboard, I believe.
Okay.
I can't quite remember. My notes are atrocious. But his keyboard layout is much more efficient. Ergonomic. It's all like, but it didn't catch on. I'll get to that in a minute. So, was the QWERTY layout created to slow people down? There was research that came out of a university, or Kyoto University, I should say. But they proposed that QWERTY stemmed from key arrangements made to satisfy the habits of the typewriter's earliest customers, telegraph operators, who used it to transcribe Morse code messages. And apparently telegraph operators they needed keys to be in a certain place, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the whole Morse code thing, it was, I don't know, I didn't get into that. I was like, whatever.
Well, it's like stenographers, right? They have different keys in different spots because they have to be faster, or they have to...
Right.
They don't... Yeah. Because, I mean, for the telegrams and stuff like that, it's like they did very short sentences. Like, it's not...
Yeah,
I'm sure they had common things that were used, and they didn't use a lot of the words or a lot of the letters. Right. Yeah. And
some people argue, well, would speed even matter? Because at the time, especially because this keyboard, it's not like everybody was typing. It wasn't like,
right.
this thing that was really, which gets into touch typing. I'm just going to talk about it because for the life of me, my research is a freaking disaster, and there's 10,000 pages here. So one thing that happened with the Remington people when they took over the patents and they started making the typewriters is they offered typing classes.
Oh.
Which kind of locked people into the QWERTY layout, right?
Yeah, because if you're teaching them how to use that, then that's what they're going to use.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was kind of this like savvy business thing of like, well, okay, like, so, let's get everybody kind of locked in here. And reception people, like all the kind of admin side, that was, the ones that were going to use the actual thing. Mm-hmm. They're like, yeah, let's do these classes. And they started to develop touch typing as a method of typing. So hunt and peck method is like literally where you just have a finger and you're looking for the letters and you're just typing.
Okay.
You're looking for at the keyboard. But touch typing is when you don't look at the keyboard and it's how we learned in school, basically. I know I had to learn touch typing. You didn't look at the keyboard. You just have to memorize where the keys are and have your fingers in a certain placement, and only certain fingers can touch certain keys. You can't just go randomly
they've got
mashing.
the little bumps on the F and the J. And that's how you know where you put your fingers.
Yeah. So I remembered like doing Mavis
home
Beacon
row.
in school.
Oh my God, Mavis Beacon.
Yeah. And just like, and so people were kind of debating like, okay, but touch typing wouldn't have really... It didn't really exist until after the typewriter was already being sold and produced, right, by Remington and everything. Even though it was really became really popular. Yeah, it's not necessarily the reason that the QWERTY keyboard was put like in that kind of layout. It's not like it help facilitate the whole speed thing, right, or slow people down. It was this whole mess of stuff, and I'm like, I hate you, history.
I also sometimes think with history that like. So, things that seem really big for us now, like, why did you choose to do it that way? It's like they might have had some, like a little bit of something that guided them in the beginning where they're like, yes, this is a great idea. And then it just kind of peters out. And then that just ends up being what was chosen, where they're like, okay, we're just going to stick with this because we don't have any more time and we have to release it by this day or whatever. So just do this. And it just sticks and it stays that way. And it just becomes what everybody accepts as is normal. you know?
What's interesting with that is, now that you mention that, give me 1 second, it's gonna happen right now. So people are kind of talking about why did the layout persist, why couldn't people use something like more efficient, and they said the fate of the keyboard was decided in 1893 when the 5 largest typewriter manufacturers, Remington, Calligraph, Yost, Densmore, and Smith Premier, merged to form the Union Typewriter Company and agreed to adopt QWERTY as the de facto standard that we know and love today.
Whoa.
So, yeah, that's an interesting kind of thing, right? Like, that somebody called it a cartel, typewriter talk cartel at some point, where it's like they basically bullied everybody into like just using their typewriters and everything. I'm like, well, it's so easy to become the standard, and then everybody's gonna, if they're learning that way. So I mean, it's clear how it persisted, but for the life of me, I don't really buy it. I'm not like swayed by the arguments that QWERTY, was because people are like, well, it was because of the telegraph operators. It was like people designed, like they tested it, and they decided, okay, let's listen to the stenographer or the telegraph person, whatever they are. And make it just stick with QWERTY. Like it just, I don't know. I feel like it's just like these inventors were in a room. It makes way more sense to me that they were like thinking about letter placement and thinking about the jamming, the actual making of the machine, making it work. Because fixing a typewriter is at that, like back then, would be expensive. You need a specialist, right? Yeah. So if people are just jamming, one funny theory is that the reason being at those letters on the top row is because you can type typewriter just using those keys and really quickly.
Way. Oh my! I'm looking at my keyboard right now. Keyboard, you totally can.
And so salespeople at the right in the beginning would actually, that's how they would demonstrate the typewriter. They would just quickly type typewriter.
No way. That's hilarious.
They'd have like contests of like who can type it the fastest and that kind of thing. Anyway, okay, so this was a mess. I shouldn't even have presented today. I apologize, but and I'm going to cut it short because it's a disaster. I'm so mad at myself. But
stop! It's great. I love it.
Well, it bothers me because I had a lot of great info here that I'm skipping. But I think I just wanted to stress to people there are so many articles out there that definitively claim something and argue something. I've mentioned this before, but I have to say it again. And it drove me nuts that so many times people will be like, this is really why it's the QWERTY layout. And I'm like, don't just say that. You don't know for sure. The other pet peeve of mine is that we don't know something from 1860. It's not that long ago. Like, why can't we? It's not like these guys didn't write letters to each other. They were writing
at the time,
Yeah, and like they must have had the egos enough to be like, hey, gentlemen, blah, blah, blah. Like no one could, explain why they finally settled on QWERTY and how they developed it. Like, come on. And I feel like it has to be more simple than, you know, all these things of like, well, it was dictated by the typist, not the machine. And I'm like, I hate
but I
you,
think
history.
some of that stuff is like, some of that stuff is like, it might just take like a deeper look where it's like, then you're actually going into the proper like archives, like doing the initial research yourself. Because at this point, we're like doing like an overview of the research that's been gathered by other people, basically, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure if you went and like actually could go and look at, say, letters that were written, that were saved, that were written between this, like,
but
Christopher or Latham Scholes and his brother.
But like Kyoto University, like they had a whole research team. There's that guy in Kyoto, he's actually an expert on the history of the typewriter layout, specifically keyboard layouts.
Well, then he sucks at his job.
He might, but like, you know, he definitely, like, I don't understand it. Like, if he can't even definitively pinpoint something, right, and argue something, like, and why is it, you know, and I think, okay, either just leave it vague and say, we don't know, or don't pollute the internet with 50,000 articles that are definitively declaring something. Yeah,
I found that too in a few of my things where, like, depending on where you're going, they're very sure, or they state something as such a fact. And I'm like, but this other place that I found, like, says the exact opposite thing. They say that that's just like a rumor that's not actually true because of this, this, and this. Right. You know, like, so why can't you just say that there are a few different options that it could be? It could be this or it could be that. You know, like, let's not be so definitive in the way that we speak about everything.
I hated this topic. I'm so mad. Okay.
Aw, I think it's so cool. I didn't know a lot of that stuff. Any of that stuff.
Your turn.
Gosh. Okay. So
cheer me up, my friend.
So this week I'm doing, like, I don't have a huge amount of stuff for the overall topic, but I've got a bunch of individual little stories, like anecdotal kind of stuff.
I love it.
But it's probably all vague too, but that's fine. I'm okay with it. So I was super inspired by your Muffin Man song last week in last week's episode. Okay. And so I decided to do the origin of nursery rhymes.
Don't even. I was just watching a little bit of Hip Hop Evolution. It's like this incredible documentary, like, I guess, series on Netflix. It's so good. But they actually mentioned nursery rhymes at one point, and I'm just
no way. Dang.
I'm all ears.
Okay. So the common usage of the term nursery rhyme dates to the late 18th and early 19th century. What? And most people say that that's like the heyday of the nursery rhymes. They existed before that, but they weren't really like written down until, say, the 18th century. Like, that's when they really started becoming like super popular.
No, it had to be older.
No. Like the 1700s, like the late 1600s, there are some that were starting to be written down a bit, but it's like the mid to late 1700s, and then the 1800s is like when it just really takes off. And yeah, it's crazy.
Can I just say, you've already blown my mind. Here I come with Charles Latham Scholes. He's the one who screwed up the keyboard. The end. And you're like, guess what? No, I love it. I'm so excited.
Okay, so the rhymes came from a variety of sources, including traditional riddles, proverbs, ballads, lines of mummers' plays, drinking songs, that one made me laugh, historical events, and in some cases, ancient pagan rituals. That being said, there isn't a lot of clear information. I'm going to go through a bunch of different nursery rhymes and tell you, like, the origin. And yeah, there's like, no, it sounds all nice. Oh, I'm like, okay, cool. Which one's a drinking song? None of them are clearly known of where it started from. So, okay, so there was a French poem similar to that 30 Days Hath September one, which numbered the days of the month, that was recorded in the 13th century, and people kind of talk about that as like a very, very early origin of nursery rhymes starting to be written down, even though it wasn't really a nursery rhyme.
Define what a nursery rhyme is quickly? Is it literally just something is it to teach little kids things, or is it more like just a sweet little fun song for kids?
It was more... It depends. Like, some of them were teaching things a little bit more.
Okay.
When they became really popular, like in the 18th century, was when it was starting to shift, like which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, is like the books started to shift from purely educational and like religious, like teaching kids something, to being more entertainment based.
Oh,
and
because
that's
the
where
30
nursery rhymes
days
became.
one sounded so teachy, like,
yes.
you know.
So they kind of think like, because it was teaching something in like a poem form, I don't think it's considered a nursery rhyme, but they're just talking about like, it's one of the earliest kind of ones, like poems that is like that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Totally makes sense.
The 13th century, so like as early as the 1200s then.
Okay, yeah. So teaching kind of in rhyme.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Nursery rhymes began to be recorded as part of English plays as early as the mid-16th century.
Okay.
So they weren't being recorded on their own as their own thing, but they were like as a little sing-song thing inside of a play.
Okay.
Patty Cake, Baker's Man is one of the oldest surviving English nursery rhymes, with it first appearing in a play called The Campaigners in 1698.
Oh.
And it's one of the oldest surviving that's still around to this day. It made me laugh that was the one. I know, it just made me laugh. I didn't intentionally seek it out. It was there. I was like, oh no.
You did. You were inspired by the Muffin Man.
So most nursery rhymes were not written down until the 18th century, which is when children's books started to move away from educational content towards entertainment.
Oh,
so it kind of coincided with like children being like a bit
being
more
seen as actual children, not like little labor miniature adults that have to work as well.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of hand in hand that all that stuff started, because all these little rhymes and these little songs and these things existed beforehand. Of course, people were like singing stuff or whatever, right? Like, yeah, but they weren't starting to be recorded until that point. So the first English collections of nursery rhymes were Tommy Thumb's Songbook and its sequel, Tommy Thumb's Pretty Songbook, which were both published by Mary Cooper in 1744.
Whoa.
Now, this is something that I found about, talking about conflicting sources of like information and people being very certain about things. Yeah. I don't mention Mother Goose in here because that's one of the things that I found was people were very definitive about who was the first person to mention Mother Goose and where it came from, and it was completely conflicting information. Like, so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to skip the whole Mother Goose thing.
I have to skip my whole topic next.
Yeah, just skip the whole thing. Just light your laptop on fire. It'll be fine.
I should have. I apologize for that disaster. But
it was good. Would you shut up?
No.
I'm going to tell you to shut up. Okay, so now I'm going to go into a handful of nursery rhymes that I chose that I liked the stories behind them or thought it was kind of fun to talk about.
Please tell me Muffin Man isn't on there.
It is not. It's not on there.
Good.
We know that one already. You told us. Okay, so the first one is Ring Around the Rosie, or the name, what it originally was named was Ring a Roses. I know, it doesn't have the same ring to it, but that's the version that I wrote down because it was the original.
Right, yeah.
So, ring a roses, a pocket full of posies, a tissue, we all fall down. That was the original.
Oh.
So this nursery rhyme was first published in 1881, and it's believed to be about the Black Death, which killed millions across Europe in the 1340s. Or, which I think is maybe more likely, the Great Plague of London that happened in 1665. Oh. So one of the first signs of the plague was a ring of rose-colored spots around their mouth, or I don't know. I just have a ring of rose-colored spots. Okay. The protection against the disease was, in popular belief, a posy of herbs, like so having a little like a bunch of herbs on you or whatever. But some say that the pocket full of posies rather refers to them trying to cover up the smell of the terrible rash that would develop, or the smell of all the dead bodies that were piling up everywhere because everybody was dying. So there are a few different like versions of, and it could be that it was all of them, that there's like, if you have some herbs on you, it will protect you and be good for you. And that it also helps to cover up all of the different smells that are happening.
It makes me sad that I don't think we're going to come up with a nursery rhyme for COVID.
I mean, you and I could be the ones that start it.
Let's do this. But I just automatically started singing the tune of Ring Around the Rosie.
Me too. COVID.
Nope. Okay. 365 now. Good God.
Oh my gosh. So sneezing was taken as a sure sign that you were about to die of it. Hence the tissue part that was supposed to like indicate like sneezing. And of course, the last line of it refers to death when they all fall down.
You just sneeze and they kick you down into like a pit.
Basically, you're dead now.
Oh, poor people.
So that's that one. And that one is one I know that for like, that's one that was talked about quite a few years ago. It was kind of trending of like people being like, did you know it was about death? Or whatever. So that was one that I kind of knew.
Do you know? Why was it about death? Why were they making songs
I think
like
because,
that?
But I think because that's just what was happening, right? Like it was a historical moment. That's what's happening in your life.
People sing about it.
Why do people do anything? Stop questioning.
That's a terrible answer. Aren't you curious? I am.
Why they sing about it? I think that's just how we express things. That's how people, like, back then, they didn't have, like, TV and whatever. They sat around a freaking fire at night and, like, sang songs and played guitars and whatever, right?
Well, I know that. But what a topic.
I know. But that's,
it's like with the child-oriented thing, that's what kind of throws
a good indication,
right?
But I think if you think about it now, it's like
I get it. It'd be like a warning kind of almost for the kids. Almost like how we teach kids like to wash their hands for 20 seconds and this whole thing. We probably come up with rhymes to help them wash their hands and everything. So that might have been more of a thing of like...
Exactly. Like, here are the symptoms to look out for.
Right.
If you see that, you're going to die. Sorry.
Took me a minute to get there, but I see it now. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the next one is Baba Black Sheep.
Nice.
Says, Baba Black Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. 1 for the master, 1 for the dame, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane. So this, they think, is about an extremely harsh medieval wool tax that was imposed in the 13th century by King Edward I. So some people, I like this, the way, like what this means. Some people say that it actually wasn't about a wool tax, but I think it's it's a pretty clear explanation for it.
Mm-hmm.
So King Edward I, he had just returned from the Crusades in 1272, and he needed money to pay for his military ventures. So he imposed this like pretty extreme wool tax. And at this time, the wool trade in England was massive. Everybody who had land raised sheep on it. And that landowners, they would count their wealth in terms of sheep. Like it was such an important part of the economy for them. And under these new tax rules, 1/3 of the cost of a sack of wool went to the king. So in the rhyme, he's considered the master. 1/3 went to the church, which people say is the dame. And the final 1/3 went to the farmer for the land. So the original version of this Baba Black Sheep ended with the line, and none for the little boy who cries down the lane. Which meant that none of the money, there was no money left over to go to the shepherds who worked for the farmers of that land, who had done all the work to protect the flocks. But eventually, like over time, this line was changed in order to cheer it up and make it a bit more suitable for children.
That makes so much sense. That's a very plausible origin.
Isn't that crazy?
I love that.
So a lot of people, they talk about it because it mentions black sheep. So a lot of people think it's talking about slavery, that it's talking about racial issues and stuff like that. But black sheep were considered to be bad luck because their fleeces were unable to be dyed. And so they were less lucrative for the farmer. So combining that with then like these crazy taxes, people didn't want like the black sheep was seen as like a real negative because you're starting off not making as much money from it, and then now you're being taxed on that. like on top
if
of it all,
they're
right?
going and singing to a black sheep, like, Baba, black sheep, have you any wool? And right? Mm-hmm. And then yesterday, yes, or 3 bags full.
Yeah.
That sounds like a funny, tricky kind of thing. If it's an undesirable. Man, these are interesting.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next one is Hickory, Dickory, Dock.
Yeah.
It's Hickory, Dickory, Dock. The mouse ran up the clock. The clock struck 1. The mouse ran down. Hickory, Dickory, Dock. And it goes through the numbers. So this originated as a counting game, obviously. And in some places, they say that Hickory, Dickory, Dock were the words that were used, like, kind of like when we go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Oh. They also used Hickory, Dickory, Dock, so they think that that's kind of like why they used those words in the song for it, kind of thing. So it originated as a counting game and was inspired by the astronomical clock at Exeter Cathedral. And the door to this clock room had a hole cut into it so the resident cat could enter and keep the clock free of vermin. I just thought that was a cute thing they actually had mice running up and down the clocks.
That's adorable. Oh my gosh. And I was waiting for this like harsh political scathing thing.
No. Some of these don't have much to it, and it's usually like really vague anyway. Little Miss Muffet. So Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away.
I always hated this one.
I know. I didn't really get what... I don't know. This one was first printed in 1805, and it's usually said that it emerged from a famous physician named Dr. Thomas Muffet, who did a lot of research with insects. And it's believed that one of his spiders escaped and scared his daughter, and that's kind of where it originated from.
I don't believe that.
Most people dispute this because this guy did exist. The physician existed, and he was like an insect guy, but he existed like 200 years before this like rhyme was written down. So most people dispute that this was the thing, but I thought it was funny, so I included it anyway.
I love that.
Okay, Mary, Mary, quite contrary. Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. So this one probably has like the most undisputed historical ties. Okay. Some of the individual, like depending on if they were a big fan of Mary or not, it depends on like how you see it, but most people agree on what the meaning behind this one is. So this one is about Mary, Queen of Scots, so also known as Mary I or Bloody Mary. She was the daughter of Henry VIII and his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Henry VIII created the Anglican Church because he wanted to get divorced, and the Catholic Church wouldn't let him. So when Mary came to the throne, she wanted to convert England back to Catholicism, which was contrary to England's wishes, as most of the country was happily Protestant by that point. She reigned for only 5 years, but it was marked with the execution of thousands of Protestants. Like, she was ruthless. Ugh. Silver bells, that is mentioned in there, and cockle shells were devices of torture. Oh. Silver bells were thumb screws, and cockle shells were attached to men's genitals. Yikes.
Oh.
Yeah. The garden is an allusion to graveyards that were being filled with Protestants. So how your garden grows. She's growing her garden. And at this time, there was an instrument used to behead people, which was very similar to a guillotine. And it was called the maiden. And some say that the maids all in a row reference to, like, they refer to this device. And some say that it's because they would burn Protestant women, so maids, at the stake. That's why they would be all in a row. Isn't that so dark?
Let it be known my face was permanently in a this is grotesque kind of expression. Like, ugh. Side note, I always pronounce it guillotine.
Guillotine? How did I pronounce it?
It's French. Guillotine. And people do pronounce it that way.
I think I normally pronounce it guillotine because I think that's correct in French. I think I pronounced it that way because
you said it nicely.
I'm reading it.
Like, it sounded like it's valid, like because people do say it that way. It's just it struck me that I'm like, which way? How do you say it? But anyway,
I think it's guillotine.
Oh, okay. That's
don't
dark.
Don't find out how wrong I am.
Well, you're not wrong.
I know, isn't that crazy? It's such a dark one. But that one's the most...
Can you read it again? Because they...
Sure. Oh, like the actual
the actual rhyme?
Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells and pretty maids all in a row. So her garden's growing with these tools that she's using, right?
Yeah, the last line kind of strikes me. Pretty maids all in a row. That's just dark.
I know, and that's where I thought, because I saw somewhere that this device was called a maiden, and that they would chop people's heads off all the time. And to me, because it's talking about the tools that she used to make her garden grow, like the graveyard grow. So silver bells, cockle shells. And so some people were like, oh, no, it's just about whatever. This one person wrote, they obviously were like a fan of Mary or something. But they were saying, silver bells were referenced like this part of like the family crest that was like she'd have them on her dresses or whatever. Oh, like the pretty maids all in a row were like she had 7 handmaids that were named Mary or something. I don't know what the hell, but... It kind of was okay, but I didn't think that it actually made sense with what it's talking about, because they're talking about her being contrary,
and the popularization of this rhyme. The fact that they would all be running around with saying it. Most, I think, more common people would probably. Is that actually the case? Was it more of a peasant thing? Do you think that would repeat this, or was it did it have to be the higher ups because it ended up being written down?
No, I think it was kind of everybody. Because I think,
I meant more like the educated versus like the uneducated, right? Like, would the uneducated really run with this complicated, symbolic poem, like how the other person was arguing with all the symbolism? Because the original, like your main one, that makes way more sense. And people would find it funny and dark,
and that's the thing. I think
I
think that's a bit more of like a natural way for those things to come about, right? Is like where it's like, she uses these things and that's how she grows her garden. Look at her garden, her graveyard garden, right?
Yeah. I don't think it would just, be that sophisticated.
Yeah.
No, as a slight to anybody. It's just, that's,
I agreed. That's why when I read it, I was like, I don't think that makes sense to me.
I know. Because
I chose the really dark one.
Like everyone wants to razz politicians and like,
of course,
leaders and the rich and everything, right? So it's like, that's kind of the most effective way to do it, right? The funniest way.
It's kind of like a political cartoon, but in song form, right?
And yet it's a nursery rhyme.
Yeah. So this next one, here we go round the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush, the mulberry bush. Here we go round the mulberry bush on a cold and frosty morning.
Oh, that's what it is?
Apparently. I know, I didn't...
so early in the morning or something.
Oh, yeah, a cold and frosty morning. So this, there's not a lot of information about it, but it's consistent everywhere that this is where it comes from.
Okay.
It came from the female inmates at England's Wakefield prison. And they would dance around a mulberry tree, which still exists there. This tree is still growing there. In their exercise yard or whatever. They would dance around this mulberry tree. And apparently they taught their kids this rhyme to keep them entertained on visiting days when like their children were allowed to come and visit them. They'd go around this mulberry tree, and that's how it kind of like got created and went about. I'm like, what the hell?
Okay. Let's think twice before continuing these songs with the children.
I know, right? It's like everybody thinks so much about all these things, but they don't. It's like when we learned in university about, like, we did a comparative lit class on fairy tales, right? And like learning all the dark stories that created the beginnings of all these fairy tales, and the reasons why they existed is like so dark.
I should do one. I should do for one of the topics.
Yeah.
I might. Because I don't think a lot of people really know.
I don't think a lot of people know.
How these start.
It's crazy.
Just wait for my fine presentation someday.
Okay, this next one kind of makes me laugh. There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth and a big slice of bread, then kissed them all soundly and sent them to bed. So this was written in 1797, and at this time, shoe meant fertility. I mean, obviously she had a million kids. But a local Lancashire custom at the time was that women who wanted to have children would try on the shoes of a woman who had just given birth. So it was like a custom that kind of like just a superstition that happened. But they think that that's where that thing came from. That's why she lived in a shoe.
Oh.
And she had a million kids. I like that one.
I'm not a fan.
Fine. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. This one, so there are two common possible meanings, and it was pretty consistent that these two meanings kind of were everywhere. It's either about forbidden love or it's about beer. So at the time it was written, Jack often meant hero, and Jill was another term for a sweetheart. Like, they were kind of the generic names that they used, like if they were telling stories and stuff.
Right, yeah.
There's a small English village called Kilmersdon that claims to be the home of the Jack and Jill rhyme, and they even have like the hill, like, and they have the little rhyme written on the hill if you go up it. So according to local legend, a young unmarried couple regularly climbed a nearby hill to conduct their liaison in private. Jill became pregnant, but just before the baby was born, Jack was killed by a rock that fell from that hill. And a few days later, Jill died while giving birth. So that's, I know, that's where they think that came from.
Oh, this is like soul-crushing information. Like, childhood's being stripped
I'm just
from me.
like watching you get more and more depressed as we go on.
I know.
Or
defeated.
Or it's an account of King Charles I's attempt to reform the tax on liquid measures. So when
Let's go with that one.
Yeah, I know. When Parliament rejected his suggestion to like do this tax, like additional tax, he instead made sure that the volume was reduced on half and quarter pints. And they were known as Jack and Jill's, but Jill with a G, respectively.
Oh.
So a half pint was known as Jack and a quarter pint was known as Jill. Mm-hmm. Or Gill, however they pronounce it. But so he was like reduced. It was just kind of like a tongue-in-cheek thing of them talking about it. They think that that's why they were going to fetch a pail of water, because why would you go uphill to get water? Wells were never at the top of hills. Wells were down at the bottom. So like it doesn't make sense for like that they were going there for water. It has nothing to do with water. But they think, a lot of people think the addition of the liquid in there is to do with this like tax reform thing of that it was changing the volume of like how much they were using or whatever. And then it could also be that it's like a lame excuse for a couple to hook up. They're like, oh, I've got to go get a pail of water. Well, why are you walking up a hill then? Like getting caught, kind of like being stupid. So vague, but funny nonetheless.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, and my very last one is London Bridge is falling down. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. I don't know why they say my fair lady at the end.
Sing so early in the morning again. Those are the only words I know, apparently.
Yeah, you just apply it to everything. Okay, so there are a few different theories around this one. One is that it refers to when the Vikings attacked the bridge in the year 1014.
No.
Olaf II of Norway allegedly destroyed the bridge. Some historians don't believe that this happened. But the song's popularity around the world is often cited as proof that it was the Vikings who created it. And the belief is that they brought this song to the many places that they traveled. So they perpetuated this. I know, not strong. Or some people say it's just referring to the degradation of an old bridge over time and ultimately a call to repair it. So like that it was created by people saying like, you got to fix our bridge because it's falling down, and making it like a thing, right?
Not quite sassy enough, I'm not sure.
I know. But my favorite theory, maybe because it's the most disturbing one, it's like super dark.
Well, these are all dark, so yeah.
I know. It's maybe the darkest one though.
Okay.
Is that there was a belief at the time that the only way to ensure that the foundation of a large structure was secure was to bury people alive inside of it as the foundation is being poured. This practice was called immurement, which is the practice of entombing someone within a structure where they slowly die from lack of food and water. There's no archaeological evidence of bodies being in the bridge, but a lot of people say that it's actually children that were buried alive under London Bridge in order to make it structurally sound, like as this thing. You are like, the look on your face right now is so funny. And so some people, like, there's no evidence of it, but it is one of the most commonly held beliefs about this song. And so somebody was like,
so what's the last line again? Of the
it's My
line?
Fair Lady. So I don't really know where that comes from. But there are multiple verses to it as well. So there's people keeping watch over London Bridge and whatever. And as
it's not
the years
a wartime rhyme?
I know. No, that was not mentioned anywhere
like
with it.
and like, you know,
you would
something.
you'd think so.
Right?
I know. That was never mentioned anywhere with any of this.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Well,
because it was created so early, because it was old, right? So somebody was writing like, just think about it for a second. So if you're playing a game while you're singing this song, which we often did as kids, you have two kids that form an arch and others run underneath it until the end of the song. And whoever's left at the end of the song was trapped by the hands of the two kids forming the arch. So trapped like in the bridge. And they're like, it doesn't mean that that's the accurate choice, but it just, when you think about it that way, makes it seem a little bit darker.
Do you have like the next verse at all? Like, or any of the other... Like even just one?
I was gonna do the second verse, but it kind of speaks to like here.
Do you think it was like a later edition, like not like?
Yeah, a lot of them changed, and some of them weren't the original verses.
Oh, okay. Because I wonder if maybe just the bridge was destroyed and just like, or was falling, and the people had to flee, like, and it just became like a thing of like, careful, don't go under the bridge, it's gonna fall on top of your head or whatever. Yeah. You know, like a cautionary kind of.
Oh, oh no.
Dang.
Yeah, it's changed so much over the years. So, like, some people say, like, it ended up changing in 1951. These people were saying London Bridge is broken down. So, speaking to the repair.
Oh, okay. That kind of, the repair thing, maybe it's a kind of a mixture of like, just stay the heck away from it, because Tommy
I think
just
it
got
must
bludgeoned by
because it definitely is not, there's no evidence that there are people buried in the base of it,
dark.
Right?
Too dark.
It's so dark. But I think it was happening at the time, and there are buildings.
Accidentally it happened.
Yeah.
I think, where was
but
that?
It was a belief at the time that the bridge was at that same time in history, and there are other known buildings where it was done intentionally, and they've got like documentation for it.
What?
Yeah, it's a thing. There's a word for it.
I know you said there's a word, but I thought
no, it was something. That's why at first when I looked at it, I was like, oh, and there's no evidence of it. But the fact that it is actually a practice that happened at that time is crazy. Yeah, and that's it.
Why?
That's all I've got.
What the hell are people?
Because people are stupid. If we have learned nothing from this podcast...
Who volunteered? Was it a prisoner, do you think?
Who says it was a volunteer?
Oh, my God. That's...
yeah, that's a very rosy look at it.
I am not a fan of this episode. It's a nightmare. Disappointed in myself. I'm disappointed in humanity. I'm not disappointed in you. You did a great job.
I think you should. I think you should start singing some of these nursery rhymes to Flynn on a regular basis, and just make him real grateful for what he's got. Oh yeah, we need to get started on that. Our COVID. That's what we're gonna do. That's what I'm gonna go do. You and I. We're gonna write our COVID nursery rhyme.
Let's do this.
Just about like nurses and doctors like committing suicide because they can't handle it.
Suitably dark.
Suitably dark, right?
Okay.
I'm a natural.
You are a natural.
Okay, let's cut this off now. Have a good week, guys. We will talk to you next week. Bye.
We love you.
We love you. Please keep listening. Bye.